The new Devil May Cry show just came out and is already a point of contention, with viewers being split between either loving the show or dooming it to Makai itself. A lot of these arguments can just be chalked up to how the show doesn't follow the source material and how that's infuriating for some fans. As a longtime fan myself, I watched the show with my friend who knew nothing of the series, and we were both so hooked that we binged the entire thing in just one sitting. I'd be calling out the references to the games while we enjoyed the story for what it was.
It's such a good song. Yes. The flashbacks. Oh my god. Oh.
Later, I explained how they had changed so much of the original story and moved away from the source material, which was what had allowed them to tell a completely separate yet equally brilliant narrative that fit within the borders of Devil May Cry. People have made a big fuss about the whole refugee subplot included within the show, claiming how something like that has never been done before in the world of Devil May Cry and thus feels out of place. All I gotta say to that is how disappointing it is to see how closed off people can become to enjoying new stories simply because it doesn't fit the short-sighted expectations that they had when going into said medium. While not as blatantly shown, a lot of demons have had the capability of reforming themselves in the lore of the OG games. That's literally how the story begins, with Sparda rebelling against Mundus. Not to mention, we have characters like Trish and that one demon from the 2007 animated series that prove how even a devil may cry. Sure, it's not the same thing as an entire class of oppressed demons that exists within a social hierarchy, but are you really gonna turn down the storytelling potential the subplot had and has simply based on how it isn't a ditto copy of the lore that's been divided among 5 games spanning 4 whole consoles? Like, come on. Franchises like Transformers reinvent and retell their stories all the time, each to their own varying levels of success depending on how well the writers are able to incorporate and interpret all the different lore and characters from the property. Why should Devil May Cry be any different? There's so many corners of this franchise that can be explored. The reboot game was widely hated because of its gross pandering to a Western-centric audience, paired with how it basically took a big old dookie on the games that preceded it, claiming itself to be the best iteration of the story. The Devil May Cry Netflix anime doesn't do that. Fact is, Adi Shankar does understand Devil May Cry. It's obvious by how he pays homage to all corners of the franchise in this show, unlike some other reboots. He is leaving the games intact and borrowing from them to reinvent the story, not disrespect it. Critique the story it's trying to tell, not the one that it isn't trying to tell. I love the show so much because of how it wasn't a one-to-one of the games. It's an original story that grabs elements from all corners of the franchise and blends them together in such a unique and interesting manner. Episode 6 is a clear example of this. That entire episode is unlike anything we've ever seen in Devil May Cry, and that is a big part of why it is so beautiful and heart-wrenching. I could have never expected this from the DMC IP, and yet it exists, and is able to string together a compelling narrative by reworking the origins of an iconic character while also revitalizing a completely new character that only showed up in some niche manga at one time. I'll honestly go as far as to say that episode 6 serves as a great litmus test for how you feel about the show by the end of it. If your reaction to a story this beautifully illustrated and tragically written was, "Okay, but why the fuck isn't Lady wearing her outfit from the games?" then this show isn't for you. I've noticed this whole rhetoric of how real DMC fans shouldn't like the show, and it's exhausting. It's just gatekeeping as well as a deterrence for new potential fans. Why wouldn't you want the show to be more popular and succeed? No one can determine what a true DMC fan likes or dislikes. The aforementioned gatekeeping can be unhealthy for any franchise. You can argue that the Netflix show has issues, some of which can be easily remedied as the series progresses. Like, seriously, give these characters some time to develop. But a show like this is a great way to introduce new people to the franchise. People who watch this show have a high likelihood of seeking out the old content and immersing themselves in the lore. I've seen this happen time and time again. This will only convince the execs that more DMC content, like a potentially new game, is profitable. But having these uber fans talk down to newcomers, casuals, and even just long-time ordinary fans in the worst way possible only undercuts that. To say that the anime is bad simply because it doesn't fit your definition of what DMC should look like, even after the franchise is known for reinventing itself time and time again, is just fucking stupid. You don't want the show to be like the games. You want the show to be like how you picture the games. I have heard people talk about how Virgil's line at the end of the show is corny, when Virgil has said even cornier stuff in the games. That's literally his thing. The twin that takes himself so seriously that he is unable to grasp just how silly he sounds sometimes. People complaining about Dante's power scaling issues within the show pretend like that isn't even more prevalent and obvious within the games. He was able to dodge lightning with ease but isn't fast enough to stop V from uniting with Urizen. And it's fine because it services the plot and moves the story forward. Sometimes the rule of cool takes precedent, and if that's annoying to you then that's fine, but don't make it an issue that pertains to the show when it can all be boiled down to personal preference. If you hate the show that much, then simply don't watch it. You already have the story laid out for you throughout 5 whole games and an entirely separate anime altogether. Too upset that they didn't introduce Trish within the first season of a show that has a lot of world building to do? Well, good news, you can find a plethora of Trish content within the 07 anime. Don't like the new characterization of Lady? Once again, just go back to the 07 anime. But wait, you guys didn't like that either, right? Nor did you enjoy Devil May Cry 4 when it tried to do something different. You see where I'm getting at here? Like I said, these quote-unquote true fans of the show only want the characters and narrative to fit their tunnel-visioned imagination of what the lore should be like. And if anything strays too far from that depiction, it's immediately trash, and anyone who likes it belongs in the dumpster alongside said garbage. You let all these projects down because it didn't fit your narrow perspective of the DMC story. Maybe if you were open to change, you'd be able to see how Devil May Cry is an objectively good show with a lot to say. It can't be compared to the games because it is inherently different. The games focus more on the characters with some shallow world building, while the show has excellent world building with characters that need time to develop. Here's the thing, if you look at the show as it stands and your biggest critique is about how Lady swears too much, then maybe take a step back and reassess if you're a fun person to be around. All this isn't to say that there aren't flaws with Lady's character, but a lot of those can be excused once you realize that the show has purposefully set up a lot to be explored within season 2. Lady still has to see the error in her ways. Dante has yet to find a purpose worth fighting for, and context still needs to be given regarding Virgil's intentions, motivations, and how he ended up working for Mundus. The best part is that the seeds have already been sown for all of this to occur. Everything that I've just said aren't flaws with the writing, they are flaws intentionally crafted to give the characters a journey to fulfill. Like what happened to Media Literacy? A show where Dante just endlessly kills demons would be incredibly boring. It's not a game. Even the OG anime understood this with how it set up an episodic structure for itself with a lot of subplots that fit within the canon of the games. Now is the time for this canon to slowly build upon itself. You can't get 2 decades worth of tension presented in just one 8-episode season. There was already enough exposition in episode 1 as is. And see, with what I just said, it's possible to critique the show for what it could change for its own betterment. Also, regardless of whether you like the plot of the show or not, the music selection was absolutely phenomenal. And yes, that also goes for the inclusion and remixes of Devil Trigger, Bury the Light, and Devils Never Cry. It meant something else in the games, but it fits the show for different reasons. Can't believe how that's another complaint that people have. The 2000s punk rock / new metal vibes showcased by Adi Shankar fits not just the world of the show, but the games as well. Like, DMC is one of the most punk rock games out there, and it embraces that. Not only did the franchise start out during the 2000s as is, the period in which the show takes place as well, but just listen to the music already present within the games. Look at the action, look at all these designs, look at Dante's outfit in the 3rd game, just look at V's appearance in general. And all of what I've said thus far goes without even mentioning how the White Rabbit legitimately carried the show on his shoulders, but that's a video for a different day. I'll also be making another video that properly addresses all the valid complaints that people have had for the show, so stay tuned for that. Until next time though, here's some more videos covering Devil May Cry, and this has been Vexodus. See ya.